Hello and welcome back to Fuck That. If you're new here, don't forget to hit subscribe so that way you never miss an episode. You know, in relationships, they say that the honeymoon phase does not last forever, but for Emily Ferlazzo, her first wedding anniversary turned into a literal horror story. On October 15th of 2021, Emily and her husband Joseph headed to Vermont, Bolton Valley, for a romantic getaway in their camper van that they recently converted from a mini school bus, and they named the Roaming Rosie. But by the end of that weekend, Emily was dead. She was brutally murdered by the person that she had trusted the most. Today, we're diving into the murder of Emily Ferlazzo, the evidence that came out at trial, which just concluded last week as of the day of this recording, and how her story highlights the dangers of unchecked abuse. Emily Jean Schwartz was born on July 25th of 1999. By all accounts, friends and family, she was truly a bright and ambitious woman who worked as a CNA at UVM, University of Vermont. Her family and friends described her as kind and vibrant. She loved to sing. She wanted to get on American Idol. And she ultimately dreamed of having a family and building a future with her new husband, Joseph. Emily met Joseph in 2018 in Vermont. Joseph at the time had been established as a tattoo artist and a body piercer for, I think, maybe 20 years. And he had Emily's friend Lauren as an apprentice for body piercings. He had stated on record, he had testified during his trial, that Lauren was a bit shaky during her apprenticeship. So he had recommended that she bring in some friends, family, people that she's comfortable with, so that she could pierce them, and that would hopefully solve her being nervous. So Lauren brought in her friend Emily, and that is how Emily and Joseph met. Joseph testified that he and Emily immediately connected. He described it as magnetic. I do want to note that Emily was 19 the summer that she met Joseph, and Joseph was 19 years her senior. After their first meeting, after Lauren had finished the piercings and Emily had left, Joseph told Lauren, quote, "She seems like she could be my next ex-wife." There's not a lot of public information available about Joseph, but according to his testimony on the stand during trial, he was born in Reading, Pennsylvania, and he lived there throughout his life until he moved to Vermont in 2012. He lived there until right after he met Emily. He moved to Maine briefly for about a year or two, but then he returned to Vermont sometime in the late spring or early summer of 2020, and when he got back, he gave Lauren a call. He testified that he had called Lauren because he wanted to see how she was coming along with tattooing and piercing, and he wanted to see if she would kick back. This is the term that he uses to hang out throughout all of his testimony. And this is how Emily and Joseph had reconnected. According to Joseph, Emily saw him for a tattoo, and he said that she was flirtatious, so he asked her if she wanted to go on a motorcycle ride through Vermont later that evening, and she agreed. After that date, the pair saw each other basically every day for the rest of the summer. Now, at the time, Joseph was couch crashing in Vermont. He said that he wasn't established, even though he was 40. Emily was living in New Hampshire with her family, but she would often stay in Vermont with friends. Around August, after dating for maybe a month or two, they decided that they wanted to live together, so they began to look for an apartment. And Emily actually found an apartment for them in Essex, and things progressed very quickly. According to Joseph, Emily proposed to him about a month after they moved in together, sometime in September. And on October 10th of 2020, the two were married, only a couple of months after they started hanging out. This romance was quick, it was intense, and by the fall of 2020, just after they got married, the cracks began to form within their relationship. While Emily was working as a CNA at the University of Vermont, Joseph began tattooing in their spare bedroom of their apartment in Essex. Quickly into their relationship, and this is according to Joseph, he said that he wanted to be polyamorous. He had stated that before they had started dating, he was always polyamorous. And he also stated that Emily was against this. She said that she didn't want to share him with anybody else and that she didn't want to be with anybody else. And this quickly became a point of contention in their relationship. According to Joseph, he had made a very half-assed promise to stay monogamous. He said, well, I can stay monogamous throughout the summer or until I meet somebody that catches my eye or you meet somebody that catches your eye, meaning until he decided that he wanted to see somebody else. There's obviously nothing wrong with people that are in a poly relationship. However, there is something wrong with a relationship where there is a clear power dynamic because somebody is 19 years older and they're trying to manipulate somebody into poly under the guise of being monogamous. And this is how the cracks in their relationship started. This didn't take long for Joseph, who maintained contact with former fuck buddies, among many other people that a married person who has agreed at least to temporary monogamy has no business communicating with. In April of 2021, Emily moved to New Hampshire, back into her parents' house with her family, and Joseph followed suit and moved in September. Emily and Joseph's first wedding anniversary was on October 10th of 2021, and they had a plan for the weekend of October 15th to not only celebrate their one-year anniversary, but also celebrate a family reunion, as Joseph states. On Friday, October 15th of 2021, Emily, Joseph, and their dog Remy set off for Vermont in their camper that they named Roaming Rosie. They were heading straight to Bolton Valley to celebrate their wedding anniversary, and also this was an opportunity for Emily to meet her sister-in-law, Joseph's sister Nikki, who she had not met at this point in time. The problem is this trip was doomed from the start. They finally arrived to Bolton Valley. They parked their camper near Joseph's sister's Airbnb, and the tension was immediate, although there will be two different accounts as to why. At 7:45 p.m., Emily and her mother had their last text exchange. At 8:13 p.m., Emily had sent her last Facebook message. That would be the last time that anybody would ever hear from Emily. Here's where things get really bizarre. Emily, after that, was nowhere to be found, but Joseph spent the rest of the weekend acting like everything was normal. Emily had disappeared, but Joseph awoke the following morning, Saturday, October 16th, without a care in the world. He made some coffee in his French press, and he sent a text to his sister pretty early in the morning saying something to the effect of, "I can't sleep, do you want some coffee?" She agreed. So he brought his sister some coffee at her Airbnb where she was staying with her boyfriend at the time, and he and his sister went to breakfast in Waterbury, Vermont, which isn't too far from Bolton Valley. When Nikki, his sister, asked where Emily was, he initially told her that morning that she was still sleeping. After breakfast, Joseph then grabbed the camper and he drove to his friend Sarah's house in St. Albans, Vermont, which is north, and he left his bus there. When they had asked where Emily was, he had told them that they had gotten into an argument and that she decided that she was going to visit some friends. Later that day, he had returned to the Bolton Valley area. He gave his sister a tattoo, and this is something that he testified on trial that required a very steady hand to accomplish. On Saturday evening, he grabbed dinner with his sister and her boyfriend at the time, and at this point, he had to explain where Emily was because it was obvious that she wasn't still sleeping. He had essentially said that they had gotten into a fight and that she had went to go hang out with some friends. He then went back to his friend's house in St. Albans and he slept inside of their bus. On Sunday, October 17th, Joseph went to brunch on Sunday with his sister Nikki. Later that evening, he returned to his friend Sarah's house where his bus was in St. Albans. They had a bonfire, and coincidentally, there was an officer in attendance that evening. But nothing out of the ordinary happened, and there was no reason for her to be skeptical of Joseph's behavior. He acted like everything was fine. In fact, she testified that she didn't even know that he had a wife. Joseph slept on the bus again that evening. Emily and Joseph were supposed to return to New Hampshire to her parents' house where they were living on Monday, October 18th. But instead of that, he grabbed his Ducati motorcycle, which was stored at his friend's home, and he drove in October 3 hours on a motorcycle to her parents' house in New Hampshire. He arrived at his in-laws' home without Emily sometime around 6 p.m. on Monday. Emily's mother and stepfather immediately noticed that Joseph returned without her, and they asked where she was. And this is the thing, he didn't really have a clear answer. He told them that he had gotten into an argument with Emily. She had gotten off the bus somewhere along Route 2. He drove away. He stopped at a gas station to let her cool off. When he drove back to return to the place where she got off the bus, she was gone and he couldn't find her. According to Emily's mother's testimony, she had testified on day 1. She had asked Joseph where their camper was twice. The first time, he said it was in New Haven, Vermont, getting fixed. The second time, he said it was at his friend's garage. Now, while he was there at Emily's parents' home, he took a shower, he changed his clothes, and he ate the dinner that Emily's stepfather had made earlier that evening. Meanwhile, Emily's family obviously called the police. At first, they called police in New Hampshire, and then they spoke to Vermont State Police, and they reported their daughter missing. Vermont State Trooper Cody spoke to Joseph while he was still at Emily's parents' house, and he testified on trial day 1 about the call with Joseph. I am going to play that call, but I just want to note that this clip and a few other clips that I'm going to play from trial do not have the best audio quality. It's a little bit noisy, so if you're listening with headphones, maybe turn the volume down just a hair, or even if you're listening on a phone speaker, turn the volume down a hair. I did my best to clean it up, but it's still a little bit shoddy.
Hey, Joseph, this is Trooper Cody, Vermont State Police. Hey, so, I just got off the phone with your father-in-law, and it sounds like there's some concern about maybe where Emily may be. Okay, what can you... It sounds like you... What else do we know at this point, I guess? Or what can you tell me? So where did you drop her off? Whereabouts? What, like up in... Okay. Yeah, there's so like the road that goes up to the ski resort? So the little parking lot right at the base of that hill you're saying? Like almost right in the corner of the main road there was 2? Yeah. Okay. And that was Saturday in the afternoon? Yes. Okay. And then you went to the gas station, the one, just down the street there? Yeah, I went down the street, got some gas, and grabbed a Coke, and then she wanted maybe a soda. I went to bring her a drink, and she was gone. So, I don't know who picked her up. She didn't tell me, and her folks said that she's not with her friends. Okay. So after you just noticed she was gone, you just decided to just leave, I guess? I drove up and down the road looking to see if she started down the road. And I drove up and down to both ways then. I didn't see her walking. Okay. So you figured the Uber or something extra? Yeah, she said she was getting an Uber. Okay. But she had her cell phone with her at that time? Yes. And like her purse or a wallet or something with some money? Yeah, she had like a wallet with cards in it. Okay. And now about what time was this? Did you drop her off, would you say? Maybe like a little afternoon, like 12:30. Like 12:30. Okay. Somewhere around there. Okay. And then, so I understand you're an Emily's fan. You guys were traveling in like a camper van?
Yes.
Okay. So it broke down somewhere, you said?
Yeah, the training smoke, so the band's in Vermont, and I came back to New Hampshire to see if she was here.
Where did your van break down?
Well, it didn't break down. I smoked, and then I brought it to the shop. Is supposed to get an inspection. The inspection was the inspection was supposed to be done in like July, so
Okay.
he's gonna take a look at the training and get it inspected.
Okay, what shop is that?
I don't know the actual name of it. It's in New Haven.
It's in New Haven.
Yeah, like right over the railroad tracks.
Oh, yep, okay. Right on the same over there.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you got a ride somehow to your motorcycle?
Yes.
Okay, where did you get your motorcycle?
My motorbike was at my friend's house. In St. Albans.
In St. Albans? Okay. And other than who Emily's parents have mentioned, you can't think of anybody in the Bolton area that maybe Emily... Do you guys have relatives in Bolton? Or is Emily?
So, no, my sister and her boyfriend came up and stayed at an Airbnb, and we just went and spent some time with them.
Okay.
And she turned super violent and told me to, took her out, and I tried to grab her by the arm, tried to pull her back in, said, come on, let's go get something to eat, and she just, she kicked me in the groin and punched me, and I was like, okay, take a couple minutes, and then by the time I came back, she was just missing me clean.
What sparked her to get so upset?
I was like, you just need some food. You need some coffee and some food. And she was just like, no, fuck that, fuck you. And it just started swinging and kicking.
Okay. And was the Airbnb here in Bolton?
That was at the top of the resort there.
Okay. Alright. Okay. Who's your friend up in St. Albans?
My friend Sarah.
Okay. Does Emily know Sarah? I mean, have you checked into Sarah?
Yeah, I saw Sarah. She hasn't seen her. I saw Sarah, and I was like, okay, I don't know where the hell Emily is, so I get my bike and go to her folks' place, because we were supposed to come back here on Monday, and today's Monday, and she's not here.
Okay. Would there be any reason why Emily would go back to your sisters and maybe your sister wouldn't tell you that Emily was there?
No, my sister just messaged me. She was checking on me. Asked if I was okay. I told her that I'm pretty crappy, but...
When Emily jumped out of the van, did she have her cell phone over there?
Yeah.
You're positive on that?
Yeah, it's just that I don't have it.
Well, I didn't know if she left it in the van or... No. Okay. Alright. Well, I might have more questions. I'll probably call you back here if I'll see if I can try to come up with something here. Maybe try to find out where she is, or if she's just trying to, ignore, that's fine, but I'd like to at least figure that out. So, if you think there's anybody that I should try calling, just let me know.
Okay.
Alright. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Bye.
Shortly after Joseph spoke to Trooper Cody, he left Emily's family's home. He told them that he had to leave because he had work to do in Vermont. Apparently, he had to get back. More important than his wife being missing, because he had to finish some tattoos. Prior to leaving, Emily's stepfather had convinced him to turn on location sharing, so they were both sharing each other's location. He left in his other vehicle, not in the Ducati that he arrived in. Instead, he left in his Jeep Wrangler, which was red. He left shortly after 8 p.m. Really quickly into his journey, he messaged his friend Spencer on Facebook Messenger to let him know that he would be at his house around 11:20 p.m. He didn't really send any other context. Now, while Joseph was heading back to Vermont, Trooper Cody had asked another trooper to drive past his friend Sarah's house. Obviously, Joseph had lied to Trooper Cody, and his gut instincts were correct. It was not getting repaired. It was at his friend's house. Joseph finally arrived at his friend Spencer's home sometime around 11:20 in the evening. He didn't go inside. Spencer came outside and he said, "Let's go pick up my van." He told Spencer that the van was in St. Albans and that he wanted to get it to Spencer's home because that was the original plan and that he needed to get it done now. Spencer agreed. They hopped into his Honda Civic and they drove towards Sarah's home in St. Albans. Spencer testified that he didn't know Sarah, so he was just driving based on Joseph's directions, and that while he was driving, that Joseph seemed a little bit distant and quiet. So at some point he asked him if there was anything going on, and Joseph said that he just wanted to get to the van, and he seemed really determined to get to the van, so Spencer just continued to drive. They eventually arrived in St. Albans about a half hour after they left, sometime around midnight, but as they pulled up to Sarah's home, they both saw several Vermont State Police trooper vehicles around the residence. Spencer testified that immediately this had made alarm bells go off in his head, and Joseph had told him to go to the end of the road and to turn around. It was a dead-end road. So he told Spencer directly to drive past the police. And this is something that didn't sit right with Spencer. He asked him what was going on, and Joseph stayed quiet. But this was not right to Spencer. He kept pushing him and saying, "Listen, you just told me to drive past police officers. You need to tell me what's going on." Joseph told Spencer that there was a lot going on and that he wished he could see his grandmother. He then told Spencer that Emily was back at the van. Spencer asked if Emily was alive, and Joseph said no. Spencer then asked if he heard her, and Joseph said yes. Spencer kicked Joseph out of the vehicle, and once Joseph exited the vehicle, Spencer immediately called 911 sometime after midnight. Spencer told the dispatcher that he was scared, he had to get him out of the car, and that he got out somewhere on Route 36 and started walking, and this is about 4 miles east of St. Albans. Once the van was located at Sarah's home in St. Albans, and this was by Vermont State Police Trooper Lippa around 11 p.m., so while he was still en route to Vermont, several other troopers arrived on scene sometime later. And this was facilitated by dispatch. They notified police about Spencer's 911 call. So this facilitated what they call a protective sweep. Because dispatch received that call and they advised them that there was a phone call that they received indicating that Emily was deceased inside of the van, it allowed them to look for her because they thought that she was potentially in distress or in need of medical care. So there were 3 members of Vermont State Police that did a protective sweep of the van, including Trooper Lippa, who testified. He described the van as lived in, maybe a bit cluttered, but he said during the protective sweep that nothing jumped out to him as broken or in disrepair. He further stated that it didn't indicate any signs of a fight, or there was nothing that jumped out at him that indicated that there was something immediately wrong. During the sweep, troopers searched the bathroom and they found several black trash bags on the floor of the shower, stacked on top of each other. They couldn't see what was inside of the bags, but they were all tied tightly shut. Trooper Lippa indicated that he lifted the bag on top to try to check the contents. He wanted to make sure that there wasn't a possibility that Emily was perhaps under the bag. And he testified that it felt light, almost as if there were pillows inside. Vermont State Police then obviously had the vehicle towed. While all of this is going on, Vermont State Police began looking for Joseph almost immediately after Spencer's 911 call. Vermont State Police Major Crimes Detective Sergeant Voris, who was called to investigate Emily's disappearance, began trying to locate her almost immediately. Initially, Voris learned that other troopers were investigating a missing persons case, so he responded to St. Albans State Police Barracks. Because there were circumstances surrounding this disappearance, meaning the 911 call saying that Joseph probably murdered her, he responded because that could indicate that this could potentially turn into a major crime, a homicide. Initially, Voris had tried to locate Emily, and he did this by requesting exigent records, which are just location records. He did this with Emily's cell phone, her Facebook, and Joseph's cell phone locations. Emily's Facebook location data gave a latitude and longitude value for her last known location of her device, which was associated with her Facebook account. And they ended up mapping this to Bolton Valley, Vermont, near Bear Run. And this was significant because it was right around where they were staying, right by the Airbnb. Emily's Facebook data last updated sometime around 10:14 p.m. on Friday, October 15th. Detective Sergeant Nolan, another member of Major Crimes, located Joseph approximately 14 hours after the 911 call that Spencer had made, and this was in the afternoon on Tuesday, October 19th. Nolan had went to Maple Fields. In Vermont, this is essentially like Cumbies, Cumberland Farms. It's a gas station, convenience store, and she'd gone there to grab lunch. She conveniently saw Joseph there buying a drink. He was brought to the St. Albans State Police Barracks shortly after 2 p.m., and he was brought into an interview room in the barracks, and he sat there for approximately 20 minutes prior to Detective Sergeant Voris's arrival. All of the interactions were recorded via audio and video. There were instances where Joseph had left the room to either use the bathroom or to smoke a cigarette. They ensured that they recorded these interactions with the digital recorder. So Joseph waived his Miranda rights, and he told Voris that he didn't have to beat around the bush. He was sure that he had already spoken to his friend Spencer. He then told Voris that they went on a trip to Bolton. Emily became berserk, psychotic, and he shot her twice in the head. He admitted all of this within 1 to 2 minutes of waiving his Miranda rights. And that is where I'm going to leave it for part 1. In part 2, I am going to go through the rest of his confession, the details of the crime, and we're also going to talk about the aftermath, which includes the mysterious death of Joseph's stepmother in 2009. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard today, please like, review, subscribe. You can find me on all social media: TikTok, fthatpod, Facebook, fthatpod, Instagram, it's fthat_pod. Website is fthatpod.com. If you want to listen to all of my episodes, there are a lot of archived episodes, and if you want to listen to my episodes ad-free and early, patreon.com @fthatpod.